Hey, Shalom. Call Halayim Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who were well. Peace and salutations to the brothers that are doing the work in truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. It's Torah Pariyah from the Providence Rhode camp. And this is going to be part one of a series dealing with the chapter Genesis 49. All right. And in this particular series, I'm hoping to establish an in-depth search within each of the tribes. All right, the sons of Jacob, and this is ultimately to bring some edification unto those who are seeking the truth as to who they are according to the Bible, the customs, as well as who their enemy is, because the enemy will be mentioned in this series. All right, and in this series, we're going to be focusing on particularly Reuben. All right, and with that being said, it's Genesis chapter 49, verse 1. It says, "And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel, your father." All right, so Jacob, being the father of his 12 sons. All right, in Hebrew, his name is Yaquab, and it means supplanter. Right, he received that name from his father Isaac, and his name later got changed to Israel, which in the Hebrew is Yasharallah. All right, and it means Prince of the Power. And he received that name after wrestling with the angel. All right, and we can read about that real quick, so I can. This is Genesis chapter 32, in verse. I'll start at 24. "And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob, Yaquab. And he said, Thy name shall be no more Jacob, or Yaquab, or supplanter, but Israel, right? Yasharallah, for as a prince has thou power with the Most High and with men, and has prevailed." All right, now that we established that, let's go back to Genesis 49. All right, Genesis 49, verse 1, it reads again, "And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel, your father." So we just read in Genesis that his name got changed to Israel, all right, which is Yasharallah, all right, Prince of the Power. And basically what he's doing here is he's telling his 12 sons prophecy that's going to befall them in the last days, and really that prophecy is going to fall upon the descendants, all right, because each son is a progenitor of a tribe, all right. So we're going to keep reading. In verse 3 it says Reuben, and now Reuben in the Hebrew is Ra'aban, which means it's a son, okay, and Reuben is a progenitor of the so-called Seminole Indians, all right. And it reads, Thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power, all right. And this is a very warlike tribe, okay. They went into many wars with the Spaniards, all right, with the Edomites, okay, and we'll get into that, a few of the wars in this lesson. As like I said, this series is to magnify a little bit more on these tribes, and their history, things of that such. All right. So it reads, Reuben, Ra'aban, thou art my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. All right. Now let's get the definition of that word dignity. All right. That word dignity is the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. Now, if we check out some images of the Seminole Indians, all right, you're gonna see these characteristic traits. You're gonna see that royal like conduct. So like it, this shit's tripping. Right, you're gonna see how in these images, just the images itself, that they had this royal ruling mentality. All right, check this out. You know, all right, there are museums, in the world somewhere where you can go and check them out. Check them out if you're close by. You see the war paint. All right, you see the fringes. Right, because these are the Israelites that we're speaking of here. This is a sect of the 10 tribes that came here to the Americas during the Assyrian captivity with Salmanazar. All right, and they came over here to follow the ways of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah. All right, which at a point in time they were doing it right, but then they fell off. All right, but take a look at a few more images here. This is the royal ruling mentality, man. The excellency of dignity. All right. In the Seminole Indians were also one of the last so-called Native American tribes to sign treaties with the Edomites, man. Let's see what we got here. As you see, you got some more. Look, you got the fringes. It's a little blurry, but you can see that. All right. Check this one out here. All right. With the feather, the feathers. Check this one right here. This is rulership right here. This is royalty. All right. We see the fringes on the bottom. This is royalty right here. All right. This is we reading about here the characteristic traits of Reuben. All right. Who are the Seminole Indians. All right. Now let's go back and read that again. It says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Right, the excellency of power. When the so-called Negroes, who is Judah, all right, Yahweh, when they were brought here to North America, all right, during the slave trade, Reuben actually took in Judah. Reuben took them in, and that's why there's a term called Black Seminole Indians. All right, now let's go ahead and go into that. Right here. This is concerning the Black Seminole Indians. All right, let me scroll up real quick. The history of the Black Seminoles. All right. Well, this is a website called Daily Just Store. All right. It says, in some cases, Dixon writes, Seminole communities also practice slavery. British officials presented Seminole chiefs with gifts of enslaved black people to strengthen alliances, and Seminoles enslaved captives from other native nations. Yeah. All right, because all said and done, um, they started taking part of the Euro American way. All right, it says enslaved people. It's like it. Let me see. But their system of slavery was much different from the English and Spanish ones. All right, their system was different than the Edomite system. It says enslaved people had to surrender a portion of their harvests to the Seminole, but they lived in their own villages without oversight. Now we know what the Edomites did, in slavery. It's not even a question. It's not even hidden. It says over time these communities merged with existing black Seminoles. While there was some intermarriage between black Seminoles and Seminole and Native Americans, they remained distinct symbiotic communities. The native people were mainly hunters and herders. The black Seminoles provided corn, sweet potatoes, and other crops. The Native American communities protected black Seminoles from re-enslavement on the area's growing white plantations. All right, so they were actually together, man. And Reuben was protecting Judah, man, because Judah was at a very low estate. All right, and it reads, uh, and those black Seminoles who had previously been enslaved by whites helped the natives with interpretation and cultural understanding of the white communities. So they were working together. Let's go back here. See what's some more. What origin were the black Seminoles? The Seminoles were largely of Creek origin and lived in villages in northern Florida. The area was also home to a number of Africans, Yahawada, Judah, Israelites, free so-called African Americans, and runaway so-called African American slaves, all of whom were known as black Seminoles. All right. Now, when Reuben took in these so-called black Seminoles, they were actually set up as kings, right? Let's see. Let's check something out real quick. Let's see. Let's take that some. John Horse. Uh, Osceola. You know. And thing is, a lot of so-called Negroes think they Judites, but nah, man, they really go back to the northern tribes, man. You know, I know down there in Mississippi, there's a lot of so-called Negroes that think they come from Africa and that they're black, but that they really coming from the Native American descent. Reuben or Guy. Northern Kingdom descent, because ultimately all the Northern Kingdom are Native American, so-called Native American. All right, but let's continue on in Genesis, um, verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. All right, meaning unstable as water. All right, meaning they are nomadic. All right, what is it to be nomadic? Let's look it up. You know, nomadic. All right, living the life of a nomad, wandering. Right, and that was ultimately mostly due to the wars that the so-called Seminole Indians were having with the Edomites. Okay, now keep this in mind. All right, unstable as water. Now we go here to Seminole, Wikipedia. Um, this is right here. The Seminole are a Native American people who developed in Florida in the 18th century. Today, they live in Oklahoma and Florida and comprise three federally recognized tribes: Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, Seminole Tribe of Florida, and the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida, as well as independent groups. The Seminole people emerged in the process of ethnogenesis from various Native American groups who settled in Spanish Florida beginning in the early 1700s, most significantly northern Muscogee Creeks from what is now Georgia and Alabama. All right, got a picture of him right here. It's a Jakes, man. Granted that this shit is off right here. You know what I'm saying? That's off. But still, man, it's a Jakes. All right. Seminole mother and her children from Brighton Reservation in Florida, 1948. Oh, 1948. Something should come to mind with that one. Let's keep going. The word Seminole is derived from the Muscogee word Seminole. This may have been adapted from the Spanish word Cimarron, so I may be pronouncing that wrong, meaning runaway or wild one. See? Runaway or wild one. Okay? When someone is wild, they're constantly all over the place, It's like a bull, You just can't really tell what direction the joint is going, or runaway. And when somebody is running away, they gotta be dwelling somewhere in order to run away from it, And due to the wars that they were having with Esau, they had to actually uh, leave their lands. All right, but remember, like I said, this is a warrior tribe here, man. They went to war. They went to war with these devils. All right. Now we're gonna get some edification on these wars. All right. I'm not gonna read too much, but if you like, you go ahead and read some on your own time. But here we go. The Seminole Wars, also known as the Florida Wars, were three related military conflicts in Florida between the U.S. and the Seminole. All right, in Reuben, citizens of a Native American nation which formed in the region during the early 1700s. Hostilities commenced about 1816 and continued through 1858, with two periods of uneasy truce between active conflict. The Seminole Wars were the longest and most expensive in both human and financial cost to the United States of the American Indian Wars. All right. So let's read a little bit here. Let's click this. The first Seminole War. There is no consensus about the beginning and ending dates for the first Seminole War. The U.S. Army Infantry indicates that it lasted from 1814 until 1819. The U.S. Navy Naval Historical Center gives dates of 1816, 1818. Other Army site dates, 1817, 1818. Andrew Jackson led an invasion of Florida during the first Seminole War. Andrew Jackson, man, the 7th president of the United States, which I believe he's on one of them. He's on one of the bills, man. He's on one of the dollar bills. All right, this damn devil. It says during the Creek War, Colonel Andrew Jackson became a national hero after his victory over the Creek Red Sticks at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. After his victory, Jackson forced the Treaty of Fort Jackson on the Creek, resulting in the loss of much Creek territory in what is today southern Georgia and central and southern Alabama. As a result, many Creek left Alabama and Georgia and moved to Spanish West Florida. The Creek refugees joined the Seminole of Florida, right? So this treaty, okay, it kicked out the Israelites from where they were, and they ran away down to Florida, all right, in Oklahoma. Let's read a little bit about this. The Treaty of Fort Jackson was signed August 9, 1814, following the defeat of the Red Stick Upper Creek resistance by United States Allied forces at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. It occurred on the banks of the Tallapoosa River near the present city of Alexander City, Alabama. The U.S. force, led by General, it consisted mainly of West Tennessee militia and 39th United States Infantry. So, brothers could read a little bit more on that if you like. But we go back to this. It's a little history. Let's go back up here. All right. Let's read what it says here. Beginning in the 1730s, the Spaniards had given refuge to runaway slaves from the Carolinas. But as late as 1774, Negroes did not appear to have been living among the Florida Indians. After that, you gotta take the meat and spit out the bones with this damn devil. All right. It says, after that latter date, more runaway slaves began arriving from American plantations, especially congregating around Negro Fort and Apalachicola River. The Negroes among the Seminoles constituted a threat to the institution of slavery north of the Spanish border. The plantation owners, mostly from Mississippi and Georgia, knew this and constantly accused the Indians of stealing their Negroes. However, the situation was frequently reserved. The whites were raiding into Florida and stealing black slaves belonging to the Seminoles. All right, now you did have so-called Native Americans with slaves, and they did have the so-called Negroes as slaves. All right. Matter of fact, read about it here. Read about it here. Right? This is Al Jazeera, the website Al Jazeera. Let me see. All right. So, members of 5 Native American nations: the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and the Seminole nations, known as the 5 tribes, owned black slaves, then located outside the territorial boundaries of the U.S. in a region known as Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. These sovereign nations were not affected by proclamations or constitutional amendments. Let's read down a little bit more. The indigenous peoples of North America had utilized a form of captive taking and voluntary labor long before European contact. But this form of bondage was neither their transgeneration nor permanent. Captive taking was most often used to replace a dead loved one within the family with a new person. The captive would then take on this deceased person's sexual or labor-related capacities. You gotta take the meat and spit out the bones, man. With this information age, you just gotta use discernment. All right, and all said and done, there was a time period where the Native Americans and the Negroes, they were together and they were actually fucking up the Edomites. All right, they were actually fucking them up, going to war up against them. All right. Let's see. Some members of the 5 tribes became owners of enslaved black women and men slaves, and men themselves, as they increasingly adapted to Euro-American norms, such as style of dress and governmental structure, right? Started taking on their customs. Beginning in the late 1700s and intensifying in the early 1800s, members of the 5 tribes used enslaved black women and men as domestic and agricultural laborers. All right, so like I said, going into a in-depth search. So if you don't got the time, go watch something else. All right, but let's go back. Seminal Wars here. Let's go to the second one. The second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842, began as a result of the United States unilaterally voiding the Treaty of Moultrie Creek and demanding that all Seminoles relocate to Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma, pursuant to the Indian Removal Act. Okay, the Indian Removal Act. What is the Indian Removal Act? Was signed into law on May 28, 1830 by United States President Andrew Jackson. The law authorized the president to negotiate with Southern Native American tribes for their removal to federal territory west of the Mississippi River in exchange for white settlement of their ancestral lands. The act was signed by Andrew Jackson and was strongly enforced under his administration and that of Martin Van Buren, which extended until 1841. All right, this is when they started to conquer. All right, the Edomites, when they started to conquer these lands. All right, and after that, give it their own names. Matter of fact, so Psalms. Let me see. I believe it's Psalms. It might be 68 and 11. No. It might be Psalms 48. Salakia. No. Psalms 49 and 11. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names, right? You know, they called it. That's why you get the America. It came from Amerigo Vespucci, Africa. You know, Leo Cyprius Africanus, so on and so forth, man. And they don't think that their thing is gonna come to naught. But guess what? They're gonna be confounded in their words, man. They're gonna be confounded in their words. Genesis 49. Let's go back here. We'll go to the third war. All right, the third Seminole War was precipitated as an increasing number of settlers in southwest Florida led to increasing tension with Seminoles living in the area. December 1855, U.S. Army personnel located and destroyed a large Seminole plantation west of the Everglades, perhaps. Hold on, let me read that again. U.S. Army personnel located and destroyed a large Seminole plantation west of the Everglades. Okay, what does it say here? What is it? I think it's John 10 and 10. Is it John 10 and 10? Yes, the thief cometh not, who is the Edomites, all right, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy, all right. That's what we just read about these damn devils. Let's look at this real quick. Some images. See that? Let's go to the next one. Who do you got here? You got them Edomites. The arrest of one of the chiefs, Osceola. All right. The Indians and Negroes. Okay. The Indians, the so-called Indians, Reuben and Yahawada, Reuben and Yahawada, massacring the whites, the Edomites, in Florida. Look at that. Fucking their ass up. You see? So it wasn't like, oh, it's not like, oh, they took Judah in captivity. Nah, man, it wasn't like that. You know what I'm saying? But they were together at one point, and they were getting down. And then it wasn't until the curses started, they had to come upon them, so that prophecy may be fulfilled. You know? Let's go back to Genesis 49. I didn't want to make this too long, but just to finish it off here. So Genesis chapter 49 and verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, right? Thou shalt not excel due to the wars that they were going up against Esau, and they couldn't defeat Esau, man. You know, like we read about, they were forced to sign treaties. You know, they went to war with the Spanish. All right, and there wasn't many of them left, but they're still here, man. They're still here. I believe Apostle recalls a Reubenite. You know, it might be Gad. I could be wrong. All right, but they're still here. They're still out here, man. It says, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it, he went up to my couch. Right now, that's talking about an account that took place here. Let me see. Genesis 35 in verse 22. Right. And it reads, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and laid with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12, right? He laid with his father's concubine, right? Genesis 4 and 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defiles thou it, because he slept with his father's concubine. Let's get First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1, and then we'll wrap it up. It says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. All right, so that's the precepts, okay, of the encounter that is talked about here when it says, thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defiles thou it. All right, he had slept with his father's concubine, okay, his father Jacob. But that wraps up series 1, okay, of Genesis, the 49th chapter. Lord willing, it was edifying to whoever is tuned in and stuck around up until the very end. We want to give all honor, glory, praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Shalom.